Michael, it's great to have a chance to talk to you during this extremely challenging time in Baltimore. You are so deeply involved in small businesses and startups in Baltimore. Tell us how you're seeing the COVID-19 pandemic play out from a business perspective. What are you seeing out there?
Well, first, Mary, let me say it's always a pleasure to talk with you, and I appreciate you having me on here. I would rewind briefly just to say, you and I have spoken about how difficult it's been for small businesses to raise capital from local lending and in the investing environment in the past before the coronavirus hit, and that was during a 10 to 12 year economic expansion. And we fast forward to where we are today, during the coronavirus issue. I think we're seeing right now a shuttering of many businesses and the shelter-in-place restrictions on customers has put small business essentially in traction. And that's all been pretty well documented. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on, Mary, your assessment on what you're seeing and how all the levels of government are responding to the coronavirus.
So I think there's been a lot of response, but as you're pointing out, a lot of hurdles to getting that assistance to small businesses. And we are, as I keep saying, racing against time here, because a lot of small businesses can't even last a month without revenue and support. My bottom line is I don't think anyone anticipated the depth and severity of this economic downturn and the financial resources that are being offered by all levels of government and the private sector are good, but we're probably going to need more.
I don't know, Mary, if you've been studying and working on this for a while as well about getting capital out in the landscape, and we've had some conversations. I don't know if you have any thoughts about how do we come back from this and how do we change the reality here, as we work our way through the coronavirus situation?
I think that's a great question. I think a lot about how we can make this city more hospitable to growth. And I think some of the things you're touching on in terms of being friendly as a city towards things like permits and licenses and helping businesses get going and helping them grow in the city is critical, because we've got to increase the job base in Baltimore, the tax base in Baltimore, and we need to encourage more people to live and work in this city. So I think that the city government can play a role in terms of offering more small business resources and being more, as I say, friendly towards small businesses and encouraging the businesses we have here and the businesses we want to have here. I think we should use this pandemic, this healthcare crisis and the economic crisis that it brought with it, as the opportunity to come back stronger in Baltimore and think about how we're going to purposefully invest in our city and what areas need to see growth, what communities need to see investment, what workers in Baltimore need more opportunities, and how can we attract and grow the businesses that we need to have here to be a thriving city. So I'd like to look at this crisis as the opportunity to do things differently going forward and to position the city to be much more friendly towards growth in Baltimore, because that's what we need to really lift too many people in this city who are living in poverty out of poverty and to give them meaningful opportunities. I'd like to know from your perspective, your experience in Baltimore, how can we give more opportunities to businesses that are owned by minorities and by women in Baltimore to close the gap that's existed for too long here? What has to change?
Yeah, I think, you and I have talked about this a little bit in the past, and I've been thinking a lot more about it. And I think we need to, as I said earlier, work on collaborating across a variety of stakeholders here in a holistic way to work together, across the entrepreneurs, the would-be entrepreneurs, bankers, other institutions in the city, to try and create, as you said, an environment that's more hospitable to folks. But I think, the other thing we need to do in tandem with that is I think we need to work really hard on building relationships with these women and minority-owned businesses and the capital partners in the city. And so if I think about my experience, it's largely been through private capital. Has not been a lot of experience with traditional commercial lending. And there has been some, but when I've done that, it's been because I've had a very long-standing relationship. I mean, I don't know, Mary, you've worked a lot on studying this and talking with people and getting behind this in your work here in the city for a while now. I'd love to ask you how risk averse you think, if we thought it was a tough lending environment before, right, how risk averse do you think folks will be after this, and what's the long-term impact, and what are your thoughts on how we need to change things?
Well, I think we learned a few things from the financial crisis now more than a decade ago, and that I think we learned that we have to be much faster in our responses, and we need to be bolder. We will be worried for some time after this downturn about our financial security, but I think it's important to start planning for recovery quickly and putting, as much optimism and concrete steps in place so that we can come back faster. Just to conclude on one question for you, from where you sit, from what you do, what are you looking for from Baltimore's next mayor?
Well, I've given that a lot of thought, I think probably the most important things I would say we need out of the next mayor is someone with familiarity with business, economic redevelopment, job creation, because we'll need a lot of help to get the economy restarted. I think I felt that way before the coronavirus issue. And I feel even more so that that's important. And finally, I think as I talk with people, the integrity question comes up a lot. And I think people want to be proud of their mayor. And I think people in general want to work with a mayor they trust. And I think the populace wants a mayor that has integrity and won't embarrass them. And, I think back to, coming out of the last economic crisis back in 2008, 2009. And, we had a situation where there was a conference of mayors meeting at the White House, and 70 mayors from across the country were invited to talk about getting resources into their cities. And our mayor, who was Sheila Dixon at the time and was under indictment, was disinvited. And that's a real world implication of, when we have issues with the trust and the integrity question, how that impacts the entire city. I know that you bring that, Mary. I've known you for a little bit now, and I'm so grateful that you've taken this mayoral race on, and I really want to thank you for that.
Thanks, Michael. Thanks for your time today.